Hello and welcome back to another live session. Thank you all for joining us. A few bits of information before we get underway in case you've just joined the live stream. There's a chat panel located on the right-hand side of the group platform. Please feel free to ask us any questions and our moderator will get back to you, and we'll do our best to pass these along to the panelists. Please note that because they are moderated, there may be a slight delay in your question or an answer showing. We'll do our best to get through them all, but if we don't manage to, don't worry, as they're all saved in the system and we'll get back to you after the event. There's also a handout that you can view and download from the Handouts tab on the main screen of the session. We have a fantastic international panel for this discussion, so now without further ado, I'd like to introduce the chair and moderator, Diane Jacoutot, founder and managing director of Edvectus, Kim Abbott, senior recruitment manager at GEMS Education, Mark Johnson, Deputy Head of Hertwood House, Qingdao in China, and Raymond Williams, the Headmaster of Colegio Anglo-Colombiano School in Bogota, Colombia. We hope that you enjoy this session, and over to you, Diane.
Thanks, Danny. Thank you all for joining us. The purpose of today's forum is to discuss how COVID has changed the recruitment landscape. From my company, Edvectus, we see many different countries and many different schools, so we get a bird's eye view, but I'm really looking forward to hearing how on the ground things have changed and to hear from our panelists. So without further ado, I'd like the panel, Kim, Mark, and Ray, to start by setting the stage for us, to tell us just a bit about your school, about your location, and the kinds of teachers that you normally hired before the pandemic.
Okay. Yeah, so hi everyone, my name's Kim, I'm the Senior Recruitment Manager at GEMS Education, based here in Dubai. My team, we recruit from a variety of countries, around 6 key countries around the world for our variety of schools. So if I was to focus on the UAE, schools that have from 500 students all the way up to our biggest school, which is an Indian curriculum school with 12,000 students. So our schools cover 4 different curriculums, being National Curriculum for England, the US curriculum, the IB, and the Indian curriculum. So very diverse.
Okay, super. Mark.
Thanks, Diane. So I'm based in China with Hertwood House. I'm the deputy principal of the primary school, although I also have the responsibility of recruiting for all of the Hertwood House China schools. So I'm recruiting for 4 schools in China. So this is a very interesting discussion topic for me. I think to answer your question, Diane, what sort of types of teachers were we looking for? I think what I would say is for our setting, we're looking in particular for people who value bilingual education, people who think that having education in more than one language is valuable. We're very much about developing global citizens. So anyone that's kind of bought into that idea is the kind of person that we were looking to recruit.
Perfect. And Ray.
Thank you, Diane.
Tell us about your school.
I will. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I say good morning. It's 6:45 a.m. here, so I'll do my best. I'm well fueled on coffee at this stage, so I'll do my best, Diane. We're in Colombia, in the Colegio Anglo-Colombiano, the prestigious school in Bogota, in the beautiful country of Colombia. I'll just give some information that I think are sometimes relevant to people watching in. We're a school of 1,850 students, non-profit organization, PYP, MYP, and IBDP school, CIS accredited. We have unlike perhaps some of the other schools, we have 65% local teachers, 35% international teachers. In terms of recruiting, we have no restrictions on hiring. I do like to keep a certain percentage of UK teachers within the school, as we are the Anglo-Colombiano, but we have no restrictions. Couples, people with no PYP, MYP, and IBDP experience, or no age or nationality restrictions. So we have quite a bit of a smorgasbord among our international teachers.
Brilliant, thank you. For the next question, I'd like to focus on the pandemic. I'd like each of you to tell us a little bit about how it unfolded in your region, how your teachers were affected, how you were affected, and any challenges that you might have faced that were unique to your region. So we'll start on this one with Ray.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Diane. No is the answer to that, in a sense, Diane. In a word, I don't think there's anything unique to Colombia here. What we found really, it came really quickly. It was a kind of a tsunami. It kind of was something that we saw on TV, and then suddenly it became a reality. So we had to get our online program up to date quickly. What we found at the beginning, and I'm sure that the schools would, with the same as schools all around the world, what we found at the beginning was there was a great anxiety within our parent community, and that in a sense became part of the discourse. There was anxiety in the discourse. Parents didn't know what was happening in their own world, what was happening in their own companies, etc., etc. So there was a great sense of anxiety, and that sort of, so we found that sort of level of discourse was heightened at the beginning, and parents were more demanding, but that settled down after a while. People began to find their way. And I suppose the pandemic, like everybody else, became the new normality. We're now in a stage where the students come in one day and have online schooling another day. So we've moved through the phases in that regard. I think one thing that's affecting us at the moment is the uncertainty. If I just talk about my expatriate staff, the uncertainty in terms of traveling, can they travel home? Can they travel for holidays? If they travel, will they be able to come back? And it's hit us quite pertinently in the issue of compassionate leave. One of the things, when you go overseas, unfortunately, parents, grandparents, etc., pass away. And there was under normal circumstances, a colleague would jump on a plane, head home for the funeral, have a few days at home, sort out the things that they had to do, say the appropriate goodbyes, hop on the plane and come back. Well, all of that is up in the air at the moment, and that does have a kind of an emotional impact and does cause a degree of uncertainty. So I think that's the thing that I would imagine that we're all grappling with in our own individual schools.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ray. Mark, let's talk about how it unfolded and affected you in China.
Sure. Well, of course, China was where this all started, really, wasn't it? So we were partway through the Chinese New Year holiday, and I remember speaking with Jamie McNamara, my principal here at Hurtwood House, Qingdao, and it was really a matter of very quickly gathering together an infrastructure and providing guidelines for our teachers so that we could very quickly move the school to online teaching. It was an exciting time in many ways because nobody had really done that before. But China now, I think, is regarded as a really safe place to be, and that shows itself here in Qingdao, for example, where I'm based. We recently, I say recently, about 2 or 3 months ago, the local government here tested millions of people with a COVID test in 4 days. It was astonishing. And the pandemic has brought out all of these sort of things that we didn't know that we could do, both in terms of what local government's capable of and what school is capable of. I recognise very much the points that Ray is making there about compassionate leave and the difficulties of overseas travel, and if someone goes, can they come back, and border closures. This is an issue. One of the really interesting challenges that we faced is that we have appointed teachers who were outside of China when we offered them a contract and appointed them, and in some cases are still outside of China. And so for instance, I'm teaching in a grade 2 class right now because our grade 2 teacher, who is based in South Africa, still hasn't been able to get here. And so she and I work the class together, and she sort of Zoom calls in, and it's actually quite amazing, some of the opportunities that this creates. For instance, just earlier today, I was teaching a lesson and I had her zooming in to the lesson, but I had her on a phone call and an earpiece as well. And so I was actually getting live coaching from a peer whilst I was teaching, and that wouldn't have happened had it not been for the pandemic. It presents some wonderful opportunities, as well as challenges. But I think what I would say more than anything is that what's characterized this for us is that it's about the integrity of people. And I think, I've heard so many horror stories about big companies, very big educational companies, cutting people loose, cutting, contracts, paper, what's it worth? I'm quite proud to say that we haven't let anyone go, whether they're on the right side of the border or not. We've found ways to honour their contracts. We've found ways to make use of them. And I mean, this is people's livelihoods that we're talking about. These are real people. And I think that is what has to be at the centre of your mind with all of this.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been an amazing time for creativity and human innovation. Yeah. Kim, let's hear about how things unfolded in the Middle East.
Okay, so interestingly, very similar to what Ray and Marcus said in many ways. We went to 100% distance learning on the 22nd of March last year. So that was converting 8,000 teachers to distance learning in a very, very short period of time, which was obviously an incredibly sharp learning curve for everybody. Having so many teachers, as Marcus quite rightly said, these are people. We live in such a expat community over here in Dubai. Many teachers are across the UAE. Many teachers are here on their own, no family. And we had a very, very severe lockdown. You couldn't leave your house without applying for a government permit to leave your house to even go grocery shopping. So a lot of our young single teachers, as well as the families, they're stuck in their houses, many of which live in apartments, similar to expat teachers around the world. And we felt we very quickly saw that their mental well-being was being affected by being locked down. They're so used to this kind of expat community, being out and about, traveling, which again the guys have mentioned as well. So what we did, we introduced something called a Care to Share scheme. So on a weekly basis, we would send out an email to all of our staff, and it had a very simple rating system of how you felt on that day, from feeling great to feeling really stormy. If you were feeling particularly sensitive and vulnerable, you would receive a call from one of our mental health first aid trained staff, who would call them within 48 hours, have a conversation with those staff. Again, if they felt that they were at risk in terms of their mental health, we would then pass them on to trained psychologists over at a fantastic company called Lighthouse Arabia, that specialise in mental health and psychology over here in the UAE, which we felt was fantastic. Now, the other thing which really affected people here was, as I mentioned, Dubai is a place where people come to because of the location. Very easy to jump on a flight, whether it's Dubai or Qatar, and travel around the world. We were on the cusp of the spring holidays, and all of a sudden, everybody's plans have stopped. You're trapped indoors, you cannot travel, you can't see the family cannot come and travel and see you. So that's something that we really did see with our teaching staff.
Brilliant. Now, I have a question specifically from Mark. Mark, China was one of the first countries that closed their borders, and we too had people stuck on either side of the border. Now, when we're looking at recruitment this year for 2021, 2022, have you seen any impact of the tightened borders, both in terms of your teachers currently wanting to renew contracts or not, and also prospective teachers worried about their ability to get there?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's quite interesting, actually. There are those teachers who have sort of chosen now is not the time to move. Now is a dangerous time because schools have cut contracts, and if I leave here where I'm safe and I go somewhere else, will I be safe? So I think that is part of the thought process of a lot of people. China faces a unique challenge. Recruitment in China, rather, faces a unique challenge. Borders are closed. And so there's a finite number of international teachers inside of China. And if you're appointing people who are outside of China, well can they get here? So I think what's important with all of this, and what I've said to prospective teachers as I've been interviewing them, is, we're very much about keeping people safe and honouring that commitment with people. I mean, I talked about one of our teachers that we've got who's still overseas now. But people are asking questions like, what's the induction process like? And will I have to go into quarantine? And what will that be like? And we talk to them about, that there are people assigned from HR who will, regularly check in with you on a daily basis. We liaise with the quarantine hotels, and we will arrange for the drop-off for food. It's very much the kind of things that Kim was talking about in his previous answer. It's about looking after people. But for sure, it's changed the dynamic. It's front-loaded the recruitment season because everybody in China realized that, actually, hang on a minute, there are only so many teachers in China. We all want them, So the whole recruitment season basically became 2 months earlier.
Yeah.
I think so can I just jump in as well and
Please.
Say the same thing happened here? There's only a finite number of teachers, and when the borders were closed, and it was they cancelled, Emirates stopped flying for a number of weeks in peak recruitment season, and so all of a sudden you had been out and recruiting in the international markets, and all of a sudden it's, will these teachers actually arrive? And so again, both GEMS and every other company, you could see it was clear what was happening. You could see it on social media. You could see there was a clear, even the ads that were being written, they were advantageous for candidates already in the region. People were stating it openly that was what they were looking for. And Mark made a really good point that I've mentioned to say this in my previous answer, in terms of it's been incredibly problematic, but also it's opened up the doors to some new opportunities and ways of problem solving that we never really had to think of before. So very similar to what Mark said, having a teacher overseas. We have a brand new school in Saudi. Saudi Arabia is still operating on a distance learning model. Brand new school open. The school has been incredibly successful, so the enrollments increase. You need to hire people last minute, and you'll know, Diane, running a recruitment agency, last minute hires are the most difficult kind. Whereas when we thought about the problem, you quickly realize it's distance learning. This isn't a problem anymore because these people don't need to travel across the world. We can hire from home country with these particular candidates from the UK. We can advertise for a remote learning teacher that will turn into an international contract eventually. And therefore, we have a number of teachers working from their comfort, their own home. And it also opened up the doors to a different type of teacher. So historically, I know one of the questions that will come up later on is in terms of the type of people that the schools are looking for and how expensive they are. So typically, offering tuition fee concessions, things like this, do play on your mind, and that plays a part in the selection process. It doesn't matter anymore because they're working remotely. They're not looking for tuition fee concessions. The other salaries might be slightly different because they're still in home country. So we had a change in strategy. So now we have people still working for the company from the comfort of their own home. So the pandemic has enabled us to see past a problem and find a solution.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If I may also just follow up there, Diane, because Kim has made a really good point when he was talking about the hiring of online teachers. We've actually invested in something that we call online mixed with offline, OMO. And essentially what we've done is reached out to teachers all around the world, and we have teachers in multiple countries now that are going to be sort of zooming in and teaching lessons with a local teacher in the room, and then the expert teacher phoning in. And Kim's absolutely right. It presents so many opportunities because actually although that's an unusual way of doing things, what it also means is that we can tap into these experts and really top end teachers that we might not be able to get, to come to China because they might not be interested. But we've got award-winning maths teachers now zooming in to teach our kids maths, teaming up with a teacher on the ground, a local teacher. So the innovation and the opportunity that it's created, no one would have even considered doing that before.
Yeah, Mark, we're doing the same thing. Physics teachers.
Yeah.
You look at a physics teacher, the physics teacher, which is, the golden egg, everybody's always searching for. But yeah, if you can introduce online teaching for physics, you're opening up to the world. Again, it doesn't matter where people are, within reason, with time zones. Absolutely, again, it's just more opportunities.
But it broadens your curriculum, doesn't it? Because we're now able through this program to share teachers with other Hurtwood House schools. So we can now have a Spanish teacher. We can offer GCSE Spanish. We didn't have the headcount before to offer GCSE Spanish, but because we can share that person with the other schools in our group through this OMO program, our curriculum becomes wider. We can now have a philosophy class because that's possible because of the innovation that's followed from the pandemic.
It also opens up opportunities for local teachers who might not have had a look in, right?
Yeah, right.
So if we go back, Kim, to hiring, one of the things that I noticed that up until the 1st of March, I was mentioning this to you in the waiting room, up until the 1st of March, we noticed about a 50% decrease in the number of jobs compared to previous years. So previous years, from all regions, our numbers were just dropped, which corresponded to an actual drop in teachers as well. So the whole market just depressed. And I'm wondering, from your viewpoint, do you think that your schools are more financially conservative and financially aware and maybe dropping, less likely to consider teachers with families or fewer classroom teachers? How has that kind of affected you and your schools?
I think every school in the world has kind of rationalized to some extent. You look at your teacher utilization. I think everybody did that. So in fact, last year around this time, we kind of went into a recruitment freeze mode where we just completely reassessed the number of teachers that we had and where they're being utilized across the network. So where Mark was saying earlier, remote teaching and how you can share that resource, we immediately started to look in the region, where can we utilize those resources across curriculums, across different areas of the country. So we did do that. In terms of number of vacancies, yes, they did seem lower at the start of the year, but I think that's one, because we were looking at enrollments and checking that our enrollment numbers were coming in, as everybody would. Because again, with Mark, what you don't want to do is have contracts when you don't have a position for people, so you need to be very careful on that point. The economy dropped, here in the UAE, by around 10%. We had a drop of 3 to 4% of enrollments in 1 year. So again, that kind of affects the numbers that you're recruiting. Our teacher turnover has dropped still further. So our teacher turnover this year is trending at around 3% below pre-COVID. Last year, we dropped by 7% within COVID. So at that time, that uncertainty, and what we saw, a significant number of teachers that had resigned to go back home or move on to other schools, decided they wanted to stay. A number of reasons for that. We think stability is kind of key, and people were looking for that stable platform and somebody that will kind of look after them when Mark had said as well, quite rightly, that people were cutting contracts left, right, and centre. It happened around the world. And we found that people saw that we were a very stable company throughout the pandemic, and other people were cutting salaries as well. So cutting salaries of teachers, their most valuable asset when you're at school is your teachers. So what does that do to the motivation of your teachers who are going through working 16, 17-hour days doing distance learning for the first time in their lives? And so we were one of the first in the country to say, we will not reduce teacher salaries. We just refuse to do it. And I think just that one message just had to drop our turnover by 7% in 1 year. And a lot of that, when we've surveyed the staff, was down to that commitment to the staff.
Brilliant. Thank you. A question for Ray. Ray, at Edvectus, one of the things we noticed this year when we have teachers come in looking for a role, they seem a lot more risk averse this year compared to previous years. So they might, instead of considering other locations, they'll stick to countries that they know well or that has a really good international infrastructure. And I'm wondering if you've noticed this or if it's affected your recruitment this year at all.
No, zero. We chatted about this briefly, Diane. If I can link that to the questions that you were asking to Mark and Kim just a second ago, I think being in Latin America, to some extent, we've been cocooned from all of this. You know, we haven't seen numbers dropping. We haven't had to do anything. We've raised teacher salaries. In terms of recruitment, retention, we've seen no impact. The only impact is on how we recruit our teachers. That's obviously changed. But to a great extent, it's businesses, you know, it's business as normal in terms of teacher retention and teacher recruitment. And I think that has something to do with the fact that we're always a niche market. You know, we're not China, we're not Dubai in that sense. You know, millions of teachers don't head in our direction. So any teachers who do head in our direction have already done the research, and they're certainly not risk averse if they're going to come to our part of the world. So in that sense, it's had no impact. You know, the teachers are looking for something different. They want to travel around a fantastic part of the world. You know, they want to learn Spanish. They definitely want a lifestyle that is not living in the expat bubble. And I think we have a very strong reputation of looking after our people. So in terms of retention, recruitment, we've had minimal or no impact. The only really impact, I think, we found it a bit more challenging in terms of senior positions. And I can't explain that why that was, Diane. And how we recruit our teachers. Obviously, we don't go to job fairs anymore. So we're more eclectic, I suppose, in our approach than in the past. Slightly more proactive, I would say. We noticed that the one thing we probably have noticed is that teachers don't hang around for very long. So if you're thinking of recruiting, you've got to get in and, you know, and kind of seal the deal kind of quickly. But the changes to us in Bogota have been minimal in that regard.
Brilliant. In terms of timing, let's talk about that. The timing of recruitment, because over the past 20 years that I've been doing this job, I've noticed that the recruitment cycle has been moving. And up until the pandemic, things were moving earlier and earlier and earlier, and that meant schools had to hire speculatively to try to get the right teachers. Have you noticed with the pandemic that the timing of your hiring has changed for next year? That whether you did a little bit earlier or whether you've waited and were more risk averse to wait later? So let's start with Mark.
Sure, thank you, Diane. Yeah, I think so. I think, as I mentioned earlier, everyone realized there were a finite number of teachers inside of China. Everybody wants the teachers inside of China because, who doesn't want teachers on the ground on day one? So that certainly shunted the recruitment season forward a couple of months. But I think we've been quite fortunate. Interest in our schools hasn't really waned. And I did wonder, initially as the pandemic broke out, I kind of thought, China's going to get a bad rep here and people are not going to want to come as much. And I wondered whether we would see more people heading to the UAE, for example. But China has bucked that trend. It wasn't a trend, but proven me wrong, if you like. People, as I mentioned, kind of feel China's quite a safe place to be. We're building a new school. We're opening our 5th school in Nanjing. So our company's continuing to, enjoy growth and the development of boarding schools and so on and so forth. Boarding facilities and so on and so forth. So no, yes and no. Yes, in the sense that it was earlier, but no, not in terms of it being averse.
Brilliant. Kim, did you notice anything different to Mark?
Yes, definitely. So yes and no. So we although we were not committing to a lot of the teacher contracts as early as we would previously, our recruitment activities still went ahead. So we, have a team of 9 amazing recruiters that, and, we keep a lot of data on historical trends in what we do and what the market does. And that's what we usually base our recruitment strategy on for the year, as well as enrollment, each turnover, that kind of thing. So our recruitment activities stayed the same in terms of advertising positions. My team will be screening candidates, and the difference was we were building pipelines rather than proactively recruiting the teachers. So we built pipelines waiting for the vacancies to come in so that then we could react, because I had a feeling that what would happen, Dan, is exactly what you had said has happened, and everybody now is now advertising for their positions, and the market boomed. So we were thinking like this, back in November, December, and we built that pipeline. The thing is different this year, and with GEMS, is we have such a broad range of schools, from the kind of mid-market Indian schools all the way up to premium top-level British and American and IB curriculum schools. And you've seen a shift in the enrollments. So having such a variety of schools, you can see where those trends shift and where the parents go. And so this year we're opening an extension to one of our mid-market schools, which will see over 1,000 new students joining this year. So that's nearly 100 teachers. So where we stalled on recruiting for the legacy schools, so to speak, we have 100 new teachers being required for a different school. So recruitment hasn't stopped for us, but it's just changed. The landscape has just shifted slightly.
Super. And Ray, how about your timing? Did you change your timing at all this year, or because your market really wasn't affected, was it pretty much the same as always?
Pretty much the same as always, Diane.
Yep.
We found the interest very strong. We recruited from November to February, and but obviously we're not comparing with Kim and Mark in the sense that we're just recruiting for one school. So so we found the interest very strong for whatever reason, and yes, it was successful fishing. Yes.
Excellent. Now, a question from the audience I'd like to pose is, in terms of linking recruitment and retention, the audience member asks, what is the typology of teachers that you find are more likely to stay after their initial 2-year contract? And I think it'll be interesting to hear from each of the different regions, because it may be the same or it might be different. So Ray, do you want to start off? What kind of teachers are typically renew their contracts?
I don't think I can kind of say there's a typical thing. I think there's a number of factors. Obviously, you move to a country like Colombia, some people fall in love with the country and fall in love with the culture and fall in love with the language and fall in love with the possibilities of traveling. Some people also fall in love, just like me, so they tend to stay. A number of our teachers come, we look for excellent teachers. We understand that initially it's not possible to get excellent teachers with PYP or MYP and IB diploma experience. So we invest in their teachers when they arrive. So teachers might find that after 2 years, they still haven't got as much PYP or MYP or IB diploma experience as they would like. So they tend to stay for 3 or 4 years. In our school, there's opportunities to sort of grow and take on roles of responsibility. So we find a lot of the teachers who stay are those teachers who gained an extra responsibility within their subject area, within their section of the school, etc. So there's a kind of range of reasons why teachers stay.
Okay, Kim, have you noticed anything similar, different to what Ray said?
No, very similar. I think those people that are offered those opportunities for career development are those that tend to stay longer. In terms of, when you say the type of teacher, I'm not sure when we say what type of teacher that necessarily means. Do you mean is it a young single, graduates, or somebody with 2 years experience, or somebody coming with a family of 4? I think if I was to look broadly, I would say those, the families that really think long and hard, they take a year or two to even make the decision to make that move internationally. Those are the guys that have made that commitment. Their children are embedded in the schools and they see through their education. Those are the ones that I think, would typically stay longer.
Excellent. And Mark, how about you? How is it like in China?
Yeah, I would largely echo what Ray and Kim have said there. I don't think there is a particular type of teacher. When I think about the teachers that are staying here, we sat down with our teachers several months ago and sort of said, what are your intentions? Are you looking to renew, et cetera, et cetera? I think a word that Kim used there that sort of resonated with me was commitment. We're committed to our teachers. We invest in them. You know, if they're coming into quarantine, then we're putting the money in to make sure they get put into a nice hotel. You know, people that feel looked after will stay. People that feel that, you know, you invest in their professional development will stay. So it's very much about not so much the type of person, but the way you treat people, I think.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, we notice that when there's a transactional relationship between the school and the teacher, it's transactional on both sides. Whereas when you do develop that relationship through training, through care, you know, and going the extra mile, they do remember it. They absolutely do.
I think a lot of this can be kind of worked out at interview stage. So one of the things we do is we have a thorough screening process. So before any candidate makes it to a school interview, we have a set of screening questions, and a member of the team will have a thorough conversation. And one of those questions is, you know, why are you looking to move internationally? And it's in that conversation, it opens up dialogue, and you can quickly work out the reasons why somebody is looking to make a move. Yes, that doesn't stop them moving over and embraced, you know, to kind of fall in love, which happens, and people then stay for a lifetime. But typically you work that out. And I think the initial question was 2 years in terms of contracts. So this year we've kind of broken away from the norm, and we've changed our contracts now. So we no longer offer 2-year fixed term contracts. We now offer limited contracts. So a teacher is no longer tied in for 2 years. So we would often be asked the question, is there an option for a 1-year contract? And in the end, we kind of step back and say, why do we offer a 2-year contract? But where's the benefit? Who does that lie with? So again, talking about commitment and flexibility to your staff, we're saying to teachers, come and join us. As long as you like it, you have your probation period, but then it's unlimited. You can stay for as long as you want to stay. We're not tying you into anything. You see what we are about as a company. And, you know, numbers speak for themselves. Our turnover's dropped by 3% if you were to compare to, 2018, 2019.
Yeah, very interesting. Another question from the audience is how, and this is a question that I actually have, so I'll bump it up in the order. How has the pandemic influenced the skills that you're looking for now and in the future? So for instance, do you want applicants to have proven online teaching skills? Do you look for technology savviness, resiliency? Are there any things that this pandemic has really bumped up to the fore? So let's start again with Ray.
I'm going to speak off the cuff on this one. Diane knows the answer, essentially. I think most of the teachers coming in have come in due to the circumstances with pretty honed online skills. And we're looking for a day when we will be returning to on-site schooling, full on-site schooling. At the moment, our students are in one day and home one day, so they have that kind of hybrid model. So I think all teachers coming in, all teachers have come from experience when they've been teaching either fully or partially online. So that's a kind of an inherited skill that they come in with. So no, I think the skill, what we're looking for is what we looked for last year and what we'll be looking for next year. We want teachers who are very serious about their teaching and learning, who know about raising standards, but also want a balanced life, who want to be able to have a full life outside of school and are highly professional in their performance in school. So that basic profile hasn't changed, and I don't see it's going to change largely over the coming years.
Interesting. Kim, have you noticed, are you looking for anything different?
Yeah, so I think, again, we've talked about opportunities before, and one thing we've looked at internationally is, speed of recruitment is key when you work in a competitive market. And so we've often stepped away from asking teachers to prepare demo lessons, for example, unless they were in the local market. We would ask them to come into school, present a demo lesson. If somebody's working overseas, in their home country or somewhere else internationally, it's very tough to ask them to, stick a camera in their classroom and record them teaching a lesson, safeguarding data protection, all the problems we faced. But now the teachers are so in tune with teaching online. Many of our schools, not all, but many this year, have asked them to provide a 7 to 10 minute demo lesson on a particular topic. They will record that lesson, and that's only after they've had a successful interview. So you're not asking thousands and thousands of people in if I'm talking about myself, my own experience. It's those few that you're interested in, 7 to 10 minute lesson, you have a couple of days to do it, send it in via email, a member of the SLT watches the lesson, and again, you can quickly check those skills. So I've actually seen an opportunity there, again, rather than it being a problem. So we're now looking at how do we embed that solution into our day-to-day operation. So when somebody applies for a job with us, how do we get our applicant tracking system to kind of request videos, or how do we embed that functionality? So yeah, it's definitely something we're trying to capitalize on.
Interesting. And Mark, I mean, you've had the longest experience with online teaching since China started it first. Has it changed? Has the online teaching world changed what you look for?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily agree that we've had the longest online period of teaching. We had the earliest online period of teaching, but it didn't last very long in China because it didn't need to, because we were able to reopen the schools after about 2 months. So there is that. I think that the situation, it's not so much that we look for different skills. I do think that the situation demands slight differences amongst the staff. I mean, you know, I was talking earlier about this colleague that I have who, you know, is a member of our staff, but is still in Cape Town in South Africa. The situation has demanded flexibility from her. It's demanded that she shift her focus to, you know, making informal observations in a class where she's not the one asking the questions. She's had to shift what she's doing to you know, sort of working with other colleagues and helping them to prepare resources because they've picked up her lessons, and you know, it's about finding creative solutions to enable the school to continue functioning. So I do think flexibility is something that is more important now, but opportunity comes with that, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. From my macro level, we have noticed that there is, I think the pandemic has widened the digital divide to an extent. So we are finding that some schools will just not consider older teachers because they assume that they won't be tech savvy, or they might not consider a teacher who's currently in South Africa, for instance, because they assume that if they have to go to online teaching, they won't have a stable connection. So we have noticed that because of the uncertainty in the market that you all have pointed out, we've noticed some schools trying to maybe future-proof just a little bit, just in case it can't get back to normal. So
there's a phrase I'm reminded of there. Youth is no guarantee of innovation, and age is no guarantee of wisdom. Is it something like that?
Yeah. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. But we have noticed that schools are asking for teachers to do a statement of online teaching, what their experience has been, because they just want to make sure that people they hire in the countries where it's really been quite a thing. They've asked it. So we're almost out of time. What I'd like to do is just run through each of you and ask you the question, looking forward. What do you think the results of the pandemic will be in future years, the impact in terms of staffing and recruitment? So 2 to 3 years from now, how do you think things might have changed or not? And when do you think we might get back to the old normal, if ever? So Ray, let's start with you.
Well, that's a difficult one to finish off with, Diane. You kept the best for last. Very difficult. I think the days of going back to large recruitment fairs, I think they could be a bit of a dinosaur. That's my feeling there. I think they had and have advantages. Getting to know people, getting to know a number of candidates shortly, face-to-face has clearly advantages. But I have a feeling it'd be hard for them, for that type of fair, particularly the larger type fairs, to be resurrected. So I think we will have to continue to be proactive, eclectic, look at a range of sources. I mean, I'm in a different situation than both Mark and Kim, that I only have to look after my school, and I kind of know what our kind of attraction is and the type of teachers, you know, who wish to come to my school. So I don't see in that sense there's going to be a great change for the Colegio Anglo-Colombiano. You know, we have a certain appeal. and we have a certain reputation, and there's certain teachers who wish to come and wish to stay here. And I don't think that's going to be greatly changed by the pandemic. The only imponderable that we haven't discussed, and I know that time that doesn't allow it, is the impact of vaccinations. That's a bit of an imponderable.
That is,
but it's probably not a good idea to throw an imponderable in right at the end, Diane. But
it's a really good imponderable. Kim, what do you see in the next 2 to 3 years in terms of staff recruitment?
I think the kind of the restraint that you show in terms of offering positions early, which we've already discussed, will remain for another year or two, because it's just so uncertain. Yes, we have the vaccination drives. We're about 80% of staff vaccinated already, which is it's key to the UAE and how they're pushing forward on that. But the big one, exactly what Raymond said, I think the times of recruitment fairs, the in-person fairs, are dead. I think online virtual recruitment is possibly the way forward. I've been very closely monitoring our stats this year. We typically work on, just to give you a broad perspective of how our process works, is when a screening call is done by a member of the team, and then that person is submitted to a principal. We gauge whether that person is either offered a position, they are recommended for a different school or network, or they're given a no and they're provided some feedback. So we try and operate on around 90% success rate, and that's kind of how the team are measured. Historically, when you've gone to recruitment fairs or you've gone and recruited internationally face to face, the idea is that you will get a better standard of person if you go and see them face to face. This year, our numbers are exactly the same. We're operating at around 90%, regardless of whether it's virtual or face to face. And we've just found, again, with the added benefit of being able to ask teachers to provide a demo lesson online, because now people are comfortable to do it. They can do it, they can record it. It doesn't have to be live. I think all of that clubbed together, I honestly think virtual recruitment is probably the way forward.
Yeah, it also allows your school leaders to stay in school for a longer period of time.
You can include members of your SLT. You have a school principal traveling overseas again, which is historically what we and many international schools would do. That would then mean a follow-up interview with a member of SLT, perhaps a department for a specialist. No longer required. That person doesn't have to travel. You can do that. They can perhaps even be on the same call. Save time, save money.
Absolutely. Mark, how about you? What do you project for the next 2 to 3 years in terms of recruitment? What's going to change? What's going to stay the same?
Well, I agree with Ray and Kim. I do think that face-to-face recruitment fairs are going to face, real challenges. One of the things for us is that we would attend these large fairs, and we've got now 5 Hurtwood House China schools, and we couldn't send all of our principals to a fair, because you can't have all of your principals going to a fair. Whereas now with the online fairs, the prospective candidates can speak to their would-be principal, and that it creates a much more personal touch, I think. So I agree with Ray and Kim. I don't see face-to-face fairs really, I don't see them returning to the former glory. 2 or 3 years is a long time to predict. It's very much a how long is a ball of string question, Diane. I think it is. I think I could make a prediction for 1 year. A lot of people at Hurtwood House feel safe, so they're hunkering down. And I predict that in a year we will see, as the global situation stabilizes, those people that hunkered down will kind of go, right, okay, we rode that storm out, right, now let's look. So I think there will be more movement a year from now, because I think that you'll get the normal movement plus the people who decided to just kind of hunker down for an extra year. But 2 or 3 years, how long is a ball of string?
Absolutely. Well, I just want to thank our panelists for staying up late, getting up early, and preparing beautifully for the panel. I really appreciate your viewpoints. So thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
Brilliant. And I definitely echo that, Diane. Thank you so much, Diane, Kim, Mark, and Raymond, for providing us with such valuable insight. It was really great to hear the different global perspectives about such an important topic. Thank you so much. For the audience, you'll be redirected to a short survey once we end the session. So please tell us what you thought. If there are any topics you'd like or suggestions of speakers you'd like to hear from, we'd love to hear your thoughts. We're on social media as well during the summit, so if you want to connect there, follow us at Guest Education on Twitter and use the hashtag GuestGlobal. A massive thank you once again to our panel and you, our audience. Don't forget, our next live session is coming up at 4:45 p.m. UAE time or 12:45 p.m. GMT, so in around 10 or 15 minutes. We'll talk about how you can leverage a global network of schools during a pandemic and build a culture of innovation. We hope that you enjoyed the rest of the event. Take care and bye-bye for now.
Bye, Danny. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you. Thank you.